reacting to some of the things that happened in week 9 of the college football season. I picked there to be three surprise teams this season: Indiana, Iowa State, and Texas A&M. And actually, those are three surprise teams this year. So I picked Indiana to go 8-4 before the season began, and so far they're 8-0, so they only need one more win to even pass my expectations for them that were really high. And Indiana to me looks like a team that has a chance to go to the Big Ten championship and possibly even go undefeated. I think they've got a pretty good chance to beat Ohio State. And Iowa State at 7-0. I picked them to go 9-3, so only need two more wins to meet my expectations, and they're likely going to pass my expectations too, which were very high for them because they could lose two of these last five games on their schedule, and the only good team of the five that they play is Kansas State, who I think Iowa State has a good chance of beating because they get the game at home. And then Texas A&M, they're 7-1 right now, and it looks like they're at least going to meet my expectations of 10-2. Their next three opponents are South Carolina, New Mexico State, and Auburn, and then their last opponent is Texas. So their next three opponents, none of them are very good. So that should get them to 10 wins. And I think they're actually going to beat my expectations because right now I would pick Texas A&M against Texas, especially with the game being at Texas A&M. Texas, I said last week, doesn't seem to be a national title contender to me after losing by 15 points to Georgia, and they sure didn't do anything yesterday to make me change my mind on that. So they barely beat Vanderbilt 27 to 24, and I know about how Vanderbilt is not the same, and they beat Alabama. But I've been saying that Alabama also is not a national title contender this year either. Now I know they played better yesterday, beating Missouri 34 to nothing. But you have to remember Missouri's quarterback wasn't healthy in that game, and then Missouri's also a very overrated team. But I did see that Alabama's head coach Malachi Moore got an interception in that game. So Texas A&M got the win over LSU last night, 38 to 23, and they were losing 17-7 at halftime, and then LSU couldn't stop their backup quarterback that they put in, Marcel Reed. They had a good game plan for stopping Connor Wayman. Texas A&M only got one score with him in, and he played uh, most of the game. He played the whole first half and a little bit of the second half. But when Marcel Reed was put in, Texas A&M got points on every possession. They had the ball five times with him at quarterback, and they got four touchdowns and one field goal. And with Marcel Reed at quarterback, they have a better run game because he's a very talented runner, and he also showed that he can pass too. Last night he threw a couple of good passes, one long pass, but he had in that game 62 yards on nine carries, and three of those four touchdowns that A&M scored with him in at quarterback were Marcel Reed. Mike Elko has done a really good job at Texas A&M, and I said before the season began that I thought he was the right coach for them to get them turned around quickly, and He sure has. Texas A&M's defense is very good. With LSU, they've got a very explosive offense, and to hold them to 23 points was good. But LSU, I still think is a good team. I still think their defense is better. They just weren't prepared for Marcel Reed. And LSU's next game is against Alabama after a bye week this coming Saturday. And right now, I would pick LSU in that game, with the game being at LSU. And if they do win that game, LSU is very likely going to win the rest of their games and go 10-2 because uh, there are other games that they have left after Alabama or Florida, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma, and those aren't given wins, but there are teams that LSU is quite a bit better than, and then a 10-2 SEC team I think is very likely to go to the college football playoffs. So I don't think LSU's season is over yet. And then Texas A&M, it looks like, is probably going to go to the SEC championship because their only loss was a non-conference loss. So I think they're probably going to go undefeated in the SEC. And then I wouldn't pick Texas A&M against Georgia though, but I do think that if their offense does continue to play like it did with Marcel Reed in there at quarterback, they would have a chance to beat anybody. And so Ohio State had a surprising struggle yesterday, just barely getting by Nebraska 21-17, and they had to come from behind to get the win. But you do have to remember, though, that Georgia is a really good team, and they only beat Kentucky by 1 point. And even though Ohio State's offense struggled in that game, Georgia's offense, was almost non-existent when they played Kentucky, and Kentucky has turned out not to be a very good team. And Nebraska, I know they got blown out really bad by Indiana, but other than that, they've been decent this season. And even though I know I've been defending Ohio State this season, I'm still thinking that they are a real national title contender this season. And of course, we'll see what happens when they play Penn State this Saturday. And if they lose that game, then I will say that they're not winning the national title. But Ohio State, right now, I still think is a top three team in the country, and I would pick them to beat Penn State. I'll just go ahead and tell you, Penn State though is a very good team, which they usually are though. With James Franklin coaching them, but what they've never been with him coaching them is an elite team, which I still doubt that they are. Even though they did get the win over Wisconsin yesterday, 28-13, and their quarterback actually got hurt in that game. So I was at the Ole Miss game, and they didn't do as well as they were supposed to. So they were a 20-point favorite over Oklahoma, and they only won by 12 points, 26-14. So they played a lot better in the second half, but in the first half they played very badly. They were losing at halftime, 14-10. So I'm not really disappointed that Ole Miss only scored 26 points against Oklahoma because even though this isn't the type of Oklahoma team that they've usually been in the past, which is why it's disappointing that Ole Miss only won by 12. Oklahoma this year does have a good defense. It's their offense that is what's caused them to be so bad this year, and Oklahoma's offense has been one of the worst in the country this year, and they scored 14 points in the first half, and that was very surprising because Ole Miss has had a really good defense this year, and Oklahoma, even though they only scored 14 in the first half, they had more opportunities to score. In the first half, they were moving the ball very easily on Ole Miss. Ole Miss did have quite a bit of trouble at stopping Oklahoma's run game, and Oklahoma hasn't had a run game really this year. Before yesterday, it was surprising that in the first half, Oklahoma's offensive line, that has been one of the worst in the whole country, was winning the battle with Ole Miss's defensive line, that has been one of the best in the country. But Ole Miss, I just don't think is a playoff team. I still think that they're very likely going to lose to Georgia, and I'm concerned about this Arkansas game coming up this Saturday. Now, I do know that Ole Miss was without Trey Harris, their best receiver, and that no doubt hurt them. But you do have to also remember that Oklahoma is without all of their starting receivers, and they've got a whole lot of really good receivers. And I think that's why Oklahoma is not very good this year. Uh, so that will be it with this video, and please subscribe, and thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.